Hello, hello. Welcome to Prophecy and Politics. Give me just a second here. We will go live on Instagram as well. All right. We are live on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Facebook, all major social media platforms. Please follow. Oh, I've got people joining already. Awesome. Okay, so we got a lot to talk about today. I'm going to try and run through it. The main theme of today: the judges are insane. That's our main thing. You want the headline right off the top. The judges are insane, and I will give you my perspective, which is something that you're going to hear me repeat over and over. Justify the judges. It's a concept that needs to get into your head, and that is you can just ignore the judges' rulings. Just ignore them. They don't have any power to do anything once you ignore them. Do you realize that? It's amazing to me how many Americans know that we have three different branches of government, if you can even get young people to know that nowadays, but to not know the fact that the judges have no enforcement mechanism. They really have no power. All they can do is give a ruling. They rely on other branches of government to actually enforce those rulings, and therefore they can be ignored. They can be ignored. Just ignore the judges. All right. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about rogue judges blocking Trump. So they've blocked him from sending the National Guard to Portland, and Trump has been sending the National Guard all over the country to hellhole Democrat-run cities, and I fully support that. 100%. It's going to make them mad. It's going to make them flip out. I don't care. It needs to be done. If you do not take care to enforce the laws in your own state, in your own city, and you are allowing society to just crumble and to just have mob rule and all this, then the federal government has to step in. The current laws on the books, civil rights laws, you are violating the civil rights of your people in your state and city if you simply allow crime to run crazy and you do nothing about it, and you don't do anything to help remove the illegal aliens all over this country. It's ridiculous. So we're going to talk about Jay Jones. If you haven't heard this yet, the attorney general, or he's running for attorney general in Virginia. God forbid he wins. It should be obvious that he loses now. Text messages have come out showing that the man was wishing death on his political opponents and their children. And not just like in a joking matter. In a very clear way, he's wanting that. This is the Democrat Party. This is how crazy they are. And this guy is currently in a campaign running for Virginia AG. These text messages come out. That should be the end of his career. But yeah, it's not, because the Democrats are nuts. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about an extremely sad case of a child murderer. Killed this young boy, just senseless, completely. I believe the child was 6 years old, and was released. The Kentucky Parole Board, this is Kentucky, Red Kentucky Parole Board, released this man after just 10 years for quote unquote good behavior. There is no such thing. For somebody who does a crime like that against a child, there's no such thing as good behavior. You are not released. Sorry. You can reform, and that's great, in prison and not be released. It's insane. Again, the problem you see, the judicial system, in this case, the parole board. Chicago, the city, is fighting against ICE. And that's going to be connected again to the judges. Japan has a new prime minister, so this is some good news. This basically, Japan elected their own Trump, a female Trump. We'll talk about her. Sanai Takaichi, I believe her name is. Sanai Takaichi. I looked up how to pronounce it. You should look up how to pronounce it, because you should know that name. Sanai Takaichi. She is based. And then we're going to talk about how the attempted assassin on Brett Kavanaugh, he tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice, and the man got a slap on the wrist, a light sentence. Why? Because he is now a she. All right, we're going to talk about all that. Let me make this bigger on the screen here and make me smaller. Let's see. All right, we're going to start off here with the Brett Kavanaugh case. So this is a Biden-appointed judge. Spent 7 hours justifying the shocking 22-year downward departure from sentencing guidelines for a man who attempted to kill a Supreme Court Justice, Brett Kavanaugh. And at one point saying that she was glad the crime made his mom accept his transgender identity. So what's important to this judge? The protecting of our Supreme Court justices or transgenderism? It's insane. So gave him what's the sentence? I think he gave him an 8-year sentence. I have another one on this. The idea. Here we go. Maximum sentence. So the maximum sentence that we've seen from January 6th, from anyone involved in January 6th, was 22 years. That was the maximum sentence that was laid out. Thank God, President Trump, commuted and got rid of most of those sentences. So that 22 years for participating in a guided tour of the Capitol on January 6th. The sentence for attempting to kill a Supreme Court justice, 8 years. That's insane. The man should be life in prison. In fact, the state should execute him. You don't attempt to kill a Supreme Court justice. And by the way, you'll notice here, I'm going to attack the courts a lot in this, and politically, let's be very clear, not physically, but I'm going to attack the courts politically here and their usurpation of power. They're taking over the president's power, the federal courts. And this even happens at the Supreme Court. I'm going to talk about that a lot today, but it doesn't mean that I think at all that this is okay. The guy tried to kill a Supreme Court justice. That's insane. And he's given a light sentence. The state should execute him. This is, you don't, that's a crime that is so high, you have to lay the law down on that. An 8-year sentence is ridiculous. And the judge, let me preface this, because my message today is largely going to be about how we deal with these judges. And I'm going to make the argument that these judges should be largely ignored. There is a lot of calls today. Elon Musk has even joined the fray and coming out and saying that we should start impeaching judges. And while I generally, absolutely, if we can, go ahead. My argument against it is usually that is so hard to do. The standard to impeach and then convict. We can't get anything done. Look at the government right now. They can't even reopen the government because the Republican majority is razor thin. You cannot impeach with a razor thin majority. You have to have, I think it's like 2/3 majority. It has to be a large majority to impeach. You're not going to get Democrats. These are Democrats right now who are defending a man. This is where I started off at, right? Defending a man running for Virginia AG who is caught screenshots of his text messages saying that he wants his political opponents dead and their children dead. You think the Democrat Party is going to go along with you impeaching a judge for this, for anything? No, they don't care about that. A ruling that conservatives say is wrong, and you think Democrats are going to go along with it and impeach that judge? It's not going to happen. So that's generally why I would say impeachment is usually a bad idea, because you're just not. It's a waste of time. You're not going to get a 2/3 majority or whatever it is to impeach and then convict in the House and the Senate. It's just not going to happen. I wish it would, but it's not going to happen. And so it'll turn into something that'll just take a lot of time. Even then, go ahead, try it. But I don't think that should be where you put all your eggs into that basket. if you want to go ahead and try it and get some publicity on the case, sure. I just don't think that's the solution usually. But on something like this, on a case like this, I would say this is a case where if Republicans were smart because of something like this, they would, put this up in the forefront, demand the impeachment, and let Democrats vote against it. Because let it become a national news story. This judge who gave an 8-year sentence to a man who tried to kill a Supreme Court justice, this judge should be impeached. Absolutely. Absolutely. Try and do it. You may still not succeed, but at least you'll make the Democrats look bad because, look what they're fighting. Okay, I'm not going to talk about all these things. China built the tallest bridge in the world in 4 years. The U.S. could never do that because of we have too many regulations. FedEx is being taken over by Indian foreigners because of nepotism, ethnic nepotism. That's what they do. If you didn't know, this is how it works. One Indian foreigner gets in, takes over a company, and then they hire all Indians in the chief positions. That's how it works. You can, that's racist. You can't say, I'm sorry, it's reality. It's happening over and over again. And on the one hand, I applaud the Indian community for being so close-knit family and taking care of their own. But the negative side of that is nepotism. They take care of their own to an extent where they will exclude anyone else. And we're seeing that happening over and over again. We don't have time to go into that story a lot. Here are the screenshots. This is what I started with. Democrat nominee for Virginia Attorney General, the highest prosecutor in the state of Virginia. That's what he's running for office. He sent in 2022 text messages threatening the former House GOP speaker. Here's the text messages. I mean, he is talking, the stuff that he's saying. He's saying if he had a choice, I mean, read these. Three people. If there was 3 people and he had 2 bullets, and the 3 people are the former House GOP speaker, Gilbert, and then the other 2 is Hitler and Pol Pot. Do you realize how bad Hitler and Pol Pot? I mean, Pol Pot, he doesn't get as much notoriety, notorious reputation as he should. He's not as infamous as he should be. He killed masses of his own people. Pol Pot was a murderous dictator. And Hitler, obviously, one of the worst people in all of history. But this guy says, between those 3 people, if he only had 2 bullets, here it is on the screen. I'm not even gonna read that because I don't want to get in trouble with the censors here. Look at that. 3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. What does he say there? Gilbert gets 2? These are the text messages. I'm not saying, this is what he's saying. He says Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. That's insane. And the guy who's telling him, please stop. The guy who's texting back, who's released this stuff. He says, please stop. It bothers me when you talk about hurting people or wishing death on them. And he goes on. He goes on talking about their children, hoping that their children would die. And he says, do you mean I think Todd and Jennifer are evil? So this is talking about his political opponents and that they're breeding little fascists. Yes. This guy is running for attorney general. Now, let me show you how insane the Democrat Party is. Not a single state, Virginia state Democrat has come out and denounced it and called for this. He should have resigned on his own. He's coming, no, I'm going to stay in. And why should he not? Because Democrats they're supporting him. He hasn't lost a single endorsement. The Virginia Beach Democrat Party has come out and reaffirmed their support of him. Can you imagine that? Imagine that. This is a good point. It is a side note. A side note. By the way, our government is shut down right now. And why is it shut down? Why is it shut down? Because Democrats in the House demand that we fund illegal aliens healthcare. That's why the actually, to give you an idea, Republicans are so weak. What they're calling for is keeping the funding levels and all the funding programs essentially the same as it was under Biden. Do you realize that? They haven't changed anything since they took office in January. They came in and they said, oh, we just got here. We don't have time to work on a budget. Let's just keep it the same it was under Biden. So keep the funding levels the same. Insane funding, insane spending, barely change anything, keep it the same. And they did that in January. And they said, oh, we'll fix it later. Well, here we are now, October 6th, and they're saying, yeah, let's keep it basically the same. Basically the same. And Democrats realize how weak they are, and they say, look. No, we're not even going to let you keep it at Biden levels. Now we want even more. Now we want, in addition to keeping spending at Biden levels, we want you to fund illegal aliens also. And their healthcare. Fund illegal aliens' healthcare. And Republicans are like, no, that's too far. And so the government shut down. But I just want you to just imagine for a second, if Republicans had this is why I don't support either party. I don't have loyalty to either party. I mean, Democrats are insane. You know, there's individual Republicans that I may support, but as a whole party, 90% of it is corrupt. But imagine if they had the force, the demands that Democrats had. Imagine if they thought like Democrats and wanted more instead of just bare minimum. So this guy gives a really good thought example. He said, imagine if Republicans refused to reopen the government unless all the DOGE cuts were included in the spending bill. That's the kind of stuff they should be doing. They had all the willpower to do that. Or you can name something that they, taking the power out of the judiciary. They could do that in Congress. You know that, right? They're not even asking for it. Anything that you want, defunding Planned Parenthood nationwide, or, something that you think of, some kind of Republican wish that we wish our government would do. They should be coming in and demanding that stuff and saying, we're not going to reopen the government until you do so. Instead, they take the position of, we'll give you everything that Biden wanted. And Democrats come in and say, no, we want even more. And that's why the government shut down right now, by the way. Okay. I was just a side note. Back to this Jay Jones running for, okay, here it is. Blue Virginia. The Virginia Beach Dems issue a statement which reaffirms its full support for Jay Jones for Attorney General. Their logic is, yes, he called for the murder of his political opponents. That's not cool. And they give a wink, right? Because they don't really care. In fact, that's how Democrats talk. That's how Democrats talk, friends. I've lived in a blue state, and quietly, that's how they talk. And we just saw them loudly. It's only 3 weeks ago where one of them murdered one of our brightest shining stars, political shining stars, Charlie Kirk. And we saw thousands of Democrats cheer it on. Thousands to this day cheer it on. And now we see this man running for political office. The highest prosecutor in the state of Virginia, that's what he's running for. And Democrats, yeah, he probably shouldn't have said that, but democracy is on the line. So we need to vote for him anyway. That's basically their argument. Okay, so this guy, he's so bad. His criminal record, by the way, Jay Jones, you know that he was convicted of reckless driving going 116 miles an hour in 2022. He avoided jail time by doing 1,000 hours of community service, but half of that community service time he did for his own his own nonprofit, a political action committee, which is not allowed. You're not supposed to be able to do, you can't do community service at a political action committee. That's your own political action committee. It's like if you said, I was going to do community service at my nonprofit. What's your nonprofit? Well, it's the nonprofit of my house, and I wash dishes. And so that's my community service at my nonprofit inside my house. But this is even worse. The nonprofit is a political action. So he's like furthering his own career. And that was illegal, but he got away with it anyway. You're not supposed to. Your community service should not be furthering your own career, but he did it anyway. All right. Sanai Takaichi. Takaichi Sanai. I don't know. I don't know what name comes first. Forgive me, Japanese. I don't know the custom here, but I thought it was Sanai Takaichi. I see Takaichi Sanai. She's soon to be Japan's prime minister. She is calling on the Chinese people in Japan, basically saying, look, the Chinese citizens in Japan have a duty to help state espionage. That's a fact. Japan knows this. Why are we in America allowing 500,000 Chinese students to come over to our universities when we know it is a fact that the Chinese government demands that every single one of their citizens, if they go to a foreign place, are required to do espionage for their state, for the state of China, whenever they're asked to by their government. So she in Japan is saying, look, this is not okay. These Chinese people in Japan, they might be spies for the Chinese government. She says Chinese people buying land in Japan are duty bound to turn their land into military bases if their government asks for them. And she's raising the alarm on it. She is a hardline anti-immigration. She's like the Japanese Trump, and praise God they elected her. Here's Tom Fitton. Tom Fitton, he has said, look, the impeachment of these activist judges, it's great. But do you know that the House Judiciary Committee hasn't even held a hearing on the idea of impeaching these judges? There hasn't even been a hearing on the idea of it, much less any start to impeach any of these individual judges. We're facing an uphill battle. And this is the main thing I want to talk about today. You know what? Oregon has issued an emergency lawsuit to prevent the president from sending troops, the National Guard, to protect ICE facilities, federal buildings, things like that, and help fighting Antifa and so forth. Let me come back to that in a second. I want to talk about one more case of an evil judge. I want to go back to the beginning here. One more case of an evil judge, and then we'll spend some time looking at what to do about these judges. This is the child. This is the child. 6-year-old Logan Tipton was murdered in 2015 by this man, Ronald Exantis. From what I understand, the story was the man broke into this guy's house and stabbed this child for no reason. Obviously, 6-year-old Logan Tipton, 2015. That's it. That's the boy's father, and the boy's father is saying, "Look, if I see this man, it's not going to end well for him." That's what the boy's father is saying. What do you expect me to do? He killed his son, his 6-year-old son. The Kentucky Parole Board has released this man for a heinous murder of a child, a 6-year-old child, after just 10 years. The Parole Board, not only should they step down, they should face criminal charges. They should be in prison. They are endangering their society. And Kentucky is a Republican state. The people in charge, the politicians, the state legislature, disband the parole board. Disband it. If it's this corrupt, disband the whole thing. Pause the entire parole board program until we can figure it out. Better be safe than sorry. Keep them all in jail. Pause the entire parole program. Disband this whole thing until we can figure out what the hell is going on. The parole board should be facing criminal charges. I haven't even had time to go into the illegal alien. You guys have heard of this story? Who ran the Des Moines school district? Illegal alien getting paid $300,000 a year to be the superintendent of, this is Des Moines, Iowa. What are we doing? This is Republicans being there's rhinos, and our voters are too damn nice, and we're letting these people off the hook too much. All right, let's go back. Let's talk about these judges and what to do about this. Let me scroll back down here. Let's talk about these judges. They have stopped, a federal judge has come in and stopped President Trump, blocked him, made a ruling to block him from using emergency power. So here it is. Andy Ngo, who's been doing some fantastic political work, journalism on this. Andy Ngo. Oregon's emergency lawsuit to prevent President Trump from sending troops to protect federal property. Disturbing email was included from the Portland police sergeant. In it, the Sergeant Andrew Braun blames the victims of Antifa violence for their own assaults and attacks. So if Antifa attacks you, you're responsible. It's your fault that you got attacked. This is the exact same logic that Antifa uses. They'll physically violently attack someone and say, well, don't be a fascist if you don't want to be attacked. That's their logic. It's insane. So here's what I wanted to talk about, the main thing today. So a judge has stepped in and said, look, Trump wants to send in the National Guard to Portland. We're going to block him and he's not allowed to do it. And my argument is, on this particular case, these kind of cases where the judicial branch just comes in and says, you can't do this, POTUS, you're being stopped. Just ignore it. Here's another news source on it. California National Guard members deployed to Portland as ICE protests persist. So a federal judge has stepped in with Oregon Democrats and blocked President Trump from sending the National Guard troops to protect federal properties against Antifa, a domestic terrorist organization. The judge comes in and says, no, Trump can't do that. And these judges have been doing this since Trump took office. Every little thing he does, you can't do this, you can't do that. He tried to tie his shoes. Nope, ruling, you can't do that. And so we're basically being ruled by black-robed tyrants. And there's a lot of people who have wondered, how do we fix this? How do we fix this? And they think, well, because we had radical Democrats like Biden come in and install these judges, we're just stuck with them. And there's no constitutional solution. And I'd like to suggest to you, there is a solution to this. There is a simple, brilliant constitutional solution to this that our founding fathers gave us, and it's being ignored. And this is what I think should happen. It's very simple. Judge comes in, gives a ruling like this. There's all, you've seen it. There's been dozens of rulings like this where Trump tries to do something. He tries to deport who's the guy? Kilmar Abrego, right? He deports Kilmar, and a judge comes in and says, nope, can't do that, can't deport him. Trump sends the National Guard to Portland. Judge comes in, nope, can't do that, can't send the National Guard. All the judge is doing is issuing a ruling. That's it. That's it. It's their opinion. Now, granted, it's their office to give an opinion about what can be done and what can't be done, what is constitutional and what's not, what's according to the law and what's not. But what has begun to happen is judges have basically said they don't care what the law is. They don't care that Trump has the legal authority to do these things. They don't think he should be allowed to. And so they'll just say, well, that's not legal, even though it is. So the danger that we have in this country, we have three branches of government. Congress writes the laws. The president enforces the laws. The judges tell us what the laws mean. When there's an issue, there's a controversy, is this legal or not? They make a ruling and say this is what the law means. The problem is if the judges can just make up the law, so for example, if the law says clear as day, the president can send the National Guard for this reason, and then the judge says, you know what, I don't like that reason, so I'm going to say the law didn't say that. They just lied. Then effectively what the judges are doing is they are taking the power of writing the laws out of the hands of Congress, and now they have the power. So they can, with that situation, they can just make up anything they want. They can make up a law. I mean, we've seen that in history. Roe v. Wade. Is there anything in the Constitution about abortion? No, there is not. Judges made it up anyway. Yeah, we found somewhere in here it talked about privacy. Therefore, now we have to make it legal to kill babies. Abortion. That's what they did. They just made it up. It's not in the Constitution. They made it up. And so the judges now are these kings that get to write their own laws and tell you what they mean. And if anybody does anything in a way that they don't like, they get to say, well, that's not legal. And I made a ruling, and so Trump can't do that. Even though the law says he can't do it because I said so. This was never the way our system was designed. These are rogue judges. These are judges who have clearly overstepped their bounds. So what is the constitutional solution for this? Our founding fathers talked about this. When they wrote the Constitution, when this country was not yet formed, we had independence and we had state governments, but we had not yet formed a one unified government, and we were debating over it. We got our freedom from Britain. We kicked them out. We had all these state governments, and they were trying to say, look, we got to unite to be one country. All these 13 colonies, 13 states need to be one country. And here's the proposed Constitution. And the writers of the Constitution wrote in the local newspapers arguments for it. And they went back and forth. And your local farmers back then would, and local tradesmen who were very interested in this and would read these things. And they debate it. No, but what about, I don't want the government to have too much power. I don't know about this new government. And they debated it back and forth. It's called the Federalist Papers. The writers of the Constitution told us what it meant. And one of the arguments that people who were wary of the idea of a new government, one of their arguments was, what if the judges do something like we're seeing today? What if they just take all the power to themselves? Because look, they have the right, according to the Constitution, to interpret the law however they want. What if they interpret in a way where they just make something up, and now they effectively take the power away from Congress and away from the president, and now they are kings. They have all the power. What happens then? The Federalist Papers dealt with that. Particularly, there was two Federalist Papers, Federalist Paper 78 and 81. And I'm going to give you the gist. And what they said, the solution is beautifully simple. The solution is this: ignore the judges. Just ignore them. If they try to make rulings that go beyond their power, if they try and tell the president what he can do, oh, president, you're not allowed to send the National Guard. Why? Because we feel like it. President can just ignore him. Go and send the National Guard anyway. Oh, they come in and they say, kill Mar Abrego, he cannot be deported. And all these, whatever, all these illegals can't be deported because the judge says so. Ignore them, deport them anyway. Just ignore them. That was the solution that the founding fathers told us to do in the Federalist Papers. And we've just ignored it. It's been done by presidents in the past. Andrew Jackson, for example, famously said, the court, speaking of the Supreme Court, this goes all the way to the Supreme Court. They can be ignored. Yes, they can. Andrew Jackson says the court has made their ruling. Now let them enforce it. And he's saying that rhetorically because he knew they had no power to enforce it. So he's mocking them. He's mocking them. Saying, yeah, you made your ruling. Go ahead, try and enforce it. You don't have any power. What do I mean by that? The president is in charge of enforcing the law. He has the power over the military. He has the power over all the regulatory agencies. All the regulatory agencies are the executive branch. He has power over prosecution. He can decide who to prosecute and who not to prosecute. Why? Because he runs the Justice Department. The Attorney General is his lapdog. By the way, if you don't like what Pam Bondi's doing, that's Trump's fault. He can order her tomorrow to prosecute whoever he wants or not prosecute whoever he wants. That is the way our system is designed. It's supposed to work like that. The president has the power to enforce the law, prosecutions, the military, enforcing law. He is the executive branch. It is his job to execute the laws. Okay? The judicial branch was given no power of enforcement, no enforcement mechanism. They make a ruling, they rely on others to actually enforce it. States, for example, state governments will enforce rulings. They can ignore them. The Federalist Papers said even the state governments can ignore the courts when they go out of line. They make a ruling, they rely on POTUS, the president and the states to enforce the ruling. And if they don't, then that ruling is like, a tree falling down in the woods. It happened, but no one heard it. No one cares. That's the beauty of it. So, all right, let me give you some quotes. Federalist Paper 78. And these are, arguments against the proposed Constitution and the judicial branch. I'm not going to read this whole thing because, man, it's archaic language and we're so dumbed down today. We can't understand it. He's talking about the separation of powers. This is, I think it's Alexander Hamilton arguing here. Anyway, so he's saying you consider the different powers and you think about the judicial branch, the judges. And he says, from the nature of its functions, it will always be the least dangerous of the political rights of the Constitution, because it will be least in a capacity to annoy or injure them at all. So it can't do anything. It doesn't have the capacity. And it goes on in contrast. The executive, so the president, not only dispenses with honors, but he holds the sword of the community. The president is given the sword. He runs the military. The legislature not only commands the purse, so he's in charge of the legislature, the Congress is in charge of what can be spent, so it can cut off money. It has that power, right? It can even cut the money off to courts. Do you know they did that in early days in Congress? There was a time where they just defunded a court for a whole year. And you guys are out of bounds. You don't have any power. And then they said, close it down for a year. The legislator commands the purse. Not only that, so not only commands the purse, but they prescribe the rules by which the duties and rights of every citizen are to be regulated. So they write the laws. The judiciary, the judges, by contrast, on the contrary, has no influence over either the sword or the purse. They have no influence over those things. They don't have any power. No direction either of the strength or the wealth of society, and can take no active resolution whatsoever. They can't do anything. So here's the main quote, and this is from Federalist Papers. It may truly be said to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment. And it must ultimately depend on the aid of the executive arm, even for the efficacy of its judgments. So all it can do is issue rulings. It can't even enforce those rulings. It has to rely on POTUS to enforce those rulings. So what does that tell you? It tells you that POTUS can ignore those rulings when they go too far. We've done this. Abraham Lincoln argued this. Abraham Lincoln argued that the president does not have to obey every ruling of the court, because the president intrinsically has to decide what he believes is constitutional, even if it's against what the judges say is constitutional. Think about it. It's implied in the fact that he took an oath of office to obey the Constitution. If he took an oath of office to obey the Constitution, that implies that he must understand what it means, and he has to go by his own conscience on what he thinks should be done. And that's what Abraham Lincoln argued when the Supreme Court justices were against him at the time. No, I'm going to have to ignore them. I'm going to have to ignore them. I think what they said was wrong, so I'm going to ignore them. And people will say, oh, well, that just leaves the president can do anything he wants then. No, he can be impeached. If he goes out of line, he can be impeached, and Congress can take his money away, and they can remove him from office. They can take his money away. And so there's a check and a balance against the president that way. But the check and balance of the president should not be judges coming in and saying, president can't do this, he can't do this, he can't do this. End of the day, I will tell you this. Trump is obeying these judges, and he does not have to. He does not have to. He can ignore them like Andrew Jackson did. Andrew Jackson said, the court has made its ruling, now let them enforce it. And he ignored them, and President Jackson went and he just ignored him. He went about and he carried about what he was going to do anyway, and he ignored the ruling. And that is what Trump should do. Look at these rulings and say, kick rocks. I'm going to go send the National Guard into Portland anyway. What are you going to do about it? There's nothing they can do. Literally nothing. And that is the whole point. They were never given any enforcement mechanism. They don't have any power. They don't have any power. And I'd say that's my main point today, is that the judicial branch has no power. Here we go. Here's another quote from Federalist Paper 81. Again, these are the writers of the Constitution telling us, what's going to be. And this one, it says, the supposed danger of the judiciary encroachments on legislative authority. This is happening today. The judiciary encroaching on legislative authority. That is what's happening today. They dealt with this. Federalist Paper 81. Go read it. And what does he say? What's the solution? He says, look, they can never be, they may do little stuff here and there, but it can never be so extensive as to amount to any inconvenience. Why? This may be inferred with certainty from the general nature of the judicial branch, the judicial power, from the objects to which it relates, from the manner in which it is exercised. And here's the main quote. From its comparative weakness to the other branches, from its comparative weakness, and from its total incapacity to support its usurpations by force. In other words, it has no power. If it tries to usurp authority from the other branches, it has no power, no enforcement mechanism to make it happen. It can be ignored. That's the whole point. I think what has happened today is Americans have gotten too used to the idea that when a judge says something, we're all just supposed to obey it. And this goes back to, a bygone era in the 60s where Americans were just very obedient and the country was very united, and you had ABC and NBC telling us what to believe, and everyone was just united. And that's the official story. And if they tell you to duck underneath a desk in order to hide from a nuclear blast, then you duck under a desk, even though it makes no sense. And if the Supreme Court comes in and says, well, abortion's in the Constitution, then you just believe it. And we've all come to this idea that these men in these black robes are just to be obeyed, no matter what. Supreme Court, it's the Supreme Court. And we say things, Even Trump has said this, and it's wrong. We shouldn't say this, but we'll say things like, well, the Supreme Court made a ruling, therefore it's the law of the land. No, nonsense. Like the Supreme Court ruling that states cannot ban gay marriage, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that. Absolutely not. And when the Constitution was passed, we had anti-sodomy laws in this country. They just made that up. That's not the law of the land. The law of the land is written by Congress and by state legislatures. Judicial rulings are not law. They're an opinion. They are a ruling, and that's it. And if they are an honorable ruling, then they get the respect of the community and of the other branches, and they are enforced. If they are making things up, they should be ignored. That's the idea. We have gotten to the point in America where we as the citizens, so they've done polls on this, and they said, what if Trump just ignores these rulings? What do you think? And a large percent, not all, but a large percentage of Americans think, well, that wouldn't be okay. But we need to shake this idea. We need to shake this idea from our minds that these judges need to be obeyed no matter what. We're never going to save our country. If we're going to have to impeach every single one of these judges, do you realize how many there are in districts all over the country? You're not going to impeach all of them. It's not going to happen. If you want to save this country in anything short than a catastrophic civil war, which I do not hope I hope does not happen. If you want to save this country in an orderly way, we have to realize that the judges can be ignored. The American population has got to come to terms with the fact that that is the solution that is proposed by our founding fathers. And once we accept that, we need to pressure the president to do so and the state governments to do so. So, for example, state governments could ignore the Supreme Court and ban gay marriage. They could have ignored the Supreme Court 6 decades ago and banned abortion in their states. They could just ignore it. There's nothing Supreme Court can do. They can issue a ruling all they want. They don't have power to do anything about it. They can just be ignored. What are they going to do? Say, oh, the politicians who are enforcing the law, they need to go to jail. So what if a judge does that? Who's going to arrest them? Who's in charge of the police? Not the judges. Not the judges. Who's in charge of the process of prosecuting? The executive branch of each one of those states, the governor. The governor says, no, kick rocks. No one's going to be arrested for that because it's the law, and just ignore these judges. That is what has to happen. So I know I've spent a long time pushing that, but I'll say it again in future episodes too. It's something that needs to be done. That is what needs to, when it comes to this general idea of federal judge temporary blocks Trump administration from deploying the National Guard. When you see those kind of things, it should be an easy slam dunk case of Trump saying, oh yeah, that's cool. Anyway, I'm going to go do it anyway and just ignore him. But when it comes to things like something that can be politicized because it's so shocking, an individual case, let's say, for example, a man who tried to kill a Supreme Court justice getting an 8-year sentence, slap on the wrist, that judge should be impeached, because that's a case where you can say, this is obvious. You can make a big stink about it. And, oh, here's the judge. Here's the Oregon judge who's come out and said, Trump can't do that. Yeah, she was not elected president. Ignore her. She was not elected president. Ignore her. It's that simple. Lots of other great stuff going on in the news, and terrible stuff. Elon Musk is going to make a replacement for Wikipedia. It's going to be called Grokpedia and be published in 2 weeks. Ohio has introduced a new bill that will allow utility companies to automatically adjust customers' thermostats, lower your your AC you're using too much AC power. We're going to adjust your thermostat. Oh, you're using too much heat in the winter. No, you're not allowed to use that much heat. We're going to adjust your thermostat. Crazy. Did you know that Australia is blocking all content mentioning Irina Zarutska? They're threatening to fine social media companies for allowing it if they allow any talk about her. Insane stuff. Anyway, this was my main thrust today. 8 years, yeah. This judge, 8 years for attempting to kill a Supreme Court justice. Yeah, that judge should be impeached. Yeah, I think that's good for today. Let's go ahead and stop there. Thank you guys for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. We are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X, and this will be posted also as a podcast on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Follow there as well. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for your time. Just put out a new episode or a new lesson on the New World Order and Bible prophecy. Check that out on my YouTube as well. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time. That's it for today.